This is the English Channel. To most, it's a bridge between nations, a thriving artery of global trade. Every day, cargo ships and ferries pass through these waters, their captains barely noticing the endless horizon around them. But for some, this sea is not a gateway. It's a gauntlet. Beneath these cold, unrelenting waves lie the stories of countless men, women, and children who dared to hope for something better. They come with nothing but dreams and desperation, clinging to fragile boats like this one. A dinghy, empty and battered, its journey cut short before it could reach the other side. Each piece of debris tells a story: a water bottle, once held by shaking hands; a deflated raft, once filled with terrified whispers. This is a graveyard of hope, where lives are not lost by accident but by design. These waters do not forgive, and those who cross them are left to fend for themselves. Here, on the shores of northern France, the desperate wait. These camps, scattered along the coastline, are purgatories for those caught between the lives they have fled and the future they long for. Yasin, a young man from Syria, fled his homeland with nothing but the hope of reaching his brother in London. For months he has lived in this camp, enduring cold nights, scarce food, and the constant threat of eviction. Behind him lies war and devastation. Ahead lies uncertainty. The channel calls to him, its waters both a promise and a warning. He knows the dangers. He's heard the stories of boats capsizing, of children swallowed by the waves. But he also knows he cannot stay. For Yasin, there is no life here, only the slow decay of hope. And so, he watches the horizon, waiting for his moment to cross. In the dead of night, they move. Under the cover of darkness, they leave behind the tents and tarps of the camps, driven forward by desperation. The smugglers promise safety, but the reality is far different. The dinghy, meant to carry a dozen people, is crammed with twice as many. Its thin rubber walls groan under the weight, and the motor sputters before it even leaves the shore. The life jackets handed out are little more than hollow gestures, plastic foam that offers no real protection against the icy grip of the channel. Yasin boards the boat, his heart pounding. Around him, parents cling to their children, young men whisper prayers, and the elderly sit silently, their faces resigned. The shore fades into the night, and with it, the last traces of solid ground. In this moment, they are united by one thing: the fragile hope that they might reach the other side alive. The channel shows no mercy. Its waters are cold, its currents strong, its waves relentless. For those aboard the dinghy, every moment is a battle. The motor struggles to keep pace with the waves, sputtering and coughing as if it too is exhausted. Above them, the lights of cargo ships pass in silence. These vessels, carrying goods across the world, are oblivious to the human lives fighting to stay afloat below. There are no rescue teams, no watchful eyes scanning the waters for those in distress. In this vast expanse, they are invisible, forgotten before they're even gone. Yasin grips the edge of the boat as water splashes over his hands. His breath comes in shallow gasps, his mind racing with prayers he barely remembers. He doesn't think about the odds. He doesn't think about the waves. He only thinks about reaching the other side. For him, and for the others, there is no turning back. The cargo ships that traverse the English Channel are symbols of human progress. They carry the goods that fuel economies and connect nations. But to the migrants struggling below, these vessels are indifferent giants, passing by without a glance. From the bridge, the captain scans the horizon, his attention on schedules and weather reports. The radar, tuned to detect other ships, overlooks the tiny, overcrowded dinghy bobbing in the waves. Even if the migrants were spotted, the protocol is clear. Report the sighting, but do not stop. Rescue is not their responsibility. In these waters, survival is a matter of chance, not compassion. While governments debate policies and cargo ships pass without stopping, the burden of saving lives falls on a handful of volunteers. These men and women, armed with little more than a sense of duty, scour the channel for signs of life. Their mission is dangerous. The channel's waves are unforgiving, and every minute spent searching is a gamble with their own safety. But for them, the alternative, to leave these people to die, is unthinkable. Their radios buzz with reports of a small boat taking on water, the coordinates vague, the conditions worsening. They don't hesitate. They climb aboard their rescue vessel, bracing for the challenges ahead. For these volunteers, every life matters, even when the rest of the world looks away. The channel has turned against them. The once calm waters now rise like walls, crashing over the sides of the dinghy, each wave threatening to drag them under. The motor, their only hope of control, sputters weakly, its protests growing louder with each surge of water. Fear spreads like wildfire. The passengers' whispered prayers give way to panicked shouts as they scramble to keep the boat afloat. For many, this is their first time at sea, their first encounter with nature's raw, unrelenting power. They are not sailors, they are survivors, clinging to a dream that grows fainter with every passing second. Somewhere in the darkness, the volunteers have found their target. The dinghy is barely visible, a fragile silhouette swallowed by the rising storm. But reaching it is another matter. The channel's wrath spares no one, not even those who come to save. The rescue boat pitches violently, its crew holding tight as waves crash over the bow. Their radio crackles with updates from other teams, reports of multiple boats in distress. The volunteers know they can't save everyone. Every minute spent fighting the waves is a minute lost for another life. Still, they press forward, their resolve as unyielding as the sea itself. For those on the dinghy, rescue feels close enough to touch, but still impossibly far. The boat dips lower with every wave, its passengers clinging to each other in desperation. They scream for help, their voices hoarse and frantic. But in the channel, survival isn't guaranteed. Not even when help arrives. The sea shows no mercy, and neither do the systems that fail to protect those most in need. For Yasin and the others, the fight isn't just against the waves, it's against time, against exhaustion, and against the indifference that left them here in the first place. The sea shows no mercy. With a single unforgiving wave, the fragile vessel is overturned, its passengers cast into the icy grip of the channel. The water is freezing, its cold, sharp, and unforgiving, seizing their muscles and stealing their breath. Panic spreads like wildfire. Those who can swim cling desperately to the overturned hull of the dinghy, but it offers little stability against the relentless waves. Others, weighed down by waterlogged clothes and useless life jackets, begin to sink. For many, this is the moment they feared most, the moment when hope gives way to despair. When the rescuers arrive, it's already too late for many. The sea has claimed its toll, leaving only fragments of the lives it consumed. The volunteers work tirelessly, pulling survivors from the freezing water, but their faces tell the story of their failure. They are too few, too late to save them all. For every life they recover, another drifts silently beneath the waves. The channel is littered with the debris of shattered dreams, life jackets that offered no protection, backpacks filled with memories of a better life. These are the remains of people who dared to hope, only to be abandoned to their fate. Morning breaks over the rescue station, bringing with it a somber stillness. For the survivors, the fight for life is over, but the battle to heal is just beginning. Each breath feels like a victory, yet every glance at the shore is a reminder of those who didn't make it. Yasin sits among them, shivering under a thin blanket, his mind racing with images of the night before. He clutches a photograph, his brother in London, smiling as if the world were whole. But the weight of what he has lost feels unbearable. Around him, others grieve silently, their tears mingling with the salt of the sea still clinging to their skin. For the volunteers, there is no time to mourn. The row of body bags grows longer, each one a testament to the indifference that allowed this tragedy to happen. These deaths are not accidents. They are the predictable result of policies designed to deter, to deny, and to forget. Even after surviving the sea, the migrants are not safe. On the shores they left behind, camps are dismantled, their residents displaced again and again. For Yasin, and for countless others, the message is clear: you are not wanted. Governments call these measures deterrence. They believe that by making the journey as difficult and dangerous as possible, fewer will attempt it. But the reality is far darker. These policies do not stop the crossings. They only ensure that more lives are lost in the process. This is the silent genocide, not through bullets or bombs, but through calculated neglect and the refusal to see these people as human. The world watches this tragedy unfold, its attention fleeting, its outrage muted. The headlines come and go, and the waters of the channel continue to claim lives. But for those who survive, the journey is far from over. They carry the weight of their losses with them, a burden they will bear for the rest of their lives. And for those who didn't make it, there is no justice, no closure. They are buried in unmarked graves, their stories untold, their dreams erased. To the world, they are statistics, but to someone, they were everything. This is where the journey ends for so many. An unmarked grave, a nameless cross, a life reduced to a memory carried by those left behind. For the families of the lost, there will be no closure. The channel takes, and it does not give back. But even here, amid the quiet grief, there are whispers of resilience. Volunteers return to these sites, not out of obligation, but out of compassion. They remember the names, even when the world forgets. They honor the lives, even when governments erase them. They stand as witnesses to a tragedy that continues, wave after wave. For Yasin, survival is not the end of his journey. It's the beginning of a new battle. In this detention center, hope flickers weakly, like a candle in the wind. He dreams of reuniting with his brother, of starting over, of finding the peace he fled so far to seek. But the scars of his journey remain. They are etched into his body, his heart, his soul, and they are shared by countless others, those who crossed, those who were lost, and those still waiting on distant shores. Their stories are threads in a tapestry of tragedy, woven by a world that refuses to see their humanity. The English Channel is not just a stretch of water, it is a mirror. It reflects the indifference of nations, the resilience of the human spirit, and the cost of turning away from suffering. As the waves continue to rise and fall, as boats continue to set out in the dead of night, the question remains, how many more must die before we confront this silent genocide? How many more graves must line the shores before we choose compassion over neglect? To the world, these are just numbers, but to someone, they were everything.